It's about a week away, and nothing ages worse on the internet than speculation, but let's see how wrong we can be, and talk about what happens after the tax credit ends in the US. First of all, expectations across the board need to be
lowered
for anyone who's ever qualified for a tax credit. But you'll be happy to know that this is a video about cars and not credits. And now that the playing field is level and EVs have no subsidies and gas cars only have $20 billion a year from the US, let's dig in by brand and figure it all out. Oh, it's 35 billion now that things have changed a little bit. In fact, things have changed a lot. Let's give this new era a different name. The old tax credit, that's not the IRA, but it's the original tax credit. That was the compliance era. And we can now call the era that just ended the tax credit era. And this new one that starts on September 30th or till the end of the year if you want to buy something and you have a binding contract, but basically September 30th, and more accurately at the end of the 2026 calendar year, companies are now going to have to find a way to profit from EVs, or just quit making them. It's not like there's a penalty if they don't, other than China taking over the world automotive industry and all other manufacturing going away. But it is good to look at, speculate, and understand what's about to happen. When it comes to profit, and I'm sure my finance book from college would argue with me, I think there are four fundamentals when it comes to EVs. That's technology, manufacturing, scale, and batteries. Good technology can get you subscription revenue, and tech is cheaper than it's ever been. Manufacturing is the difference between a company increasing scale and profits and share of the market and a company stuck in the compliance era making promises. Scale, we all know, is the difference between the red and the black, hence my completely wrong name that will never take shape, called the balance sheet era, but either way, it's really boring and it's everything at the same time. Finally, batteries are the pudding. That's where the proof is. If you make great engines in the 1980s or great luxury in the 1990s, whoever makes your batteries is now the proof that you are serious. If one company is paying 54 euros per kilowatt hour and another is paying 110, well, one company is winning. The chemistry, the quality, the manufacturing of the batteries are all their own rabbit hole, kind of the industry within the industry, and any of those factors from your battery manufacturer, if you're not making them yourself, can crush you. Just ask Nissan. Speaking of crush, the Aria crash test ratings are out, and there's a moderate because of backseat performance in a crash test. Funny how the ratings came out at basically the same time as the cancellation. That's curious. If I'm reading this article, I'm just criticizing Nissan. The Aria is a joke. It needs a redesign. But at the end of the day, everybody just made a brand new platform. They took 100 years or more of research, intellectual property, development, supply chain, and they had to delete it or re-engineer it to put a battery in it. So when the question becomes, how does a legacy OEM fail a crash test in 2025? It's that. Was this the best car ever? No, but it was Nissan's, formerly Datsun's, first try. And it looks a lot like a first try. In fact, the Aria on paper does too. The Leaf will be the second vehicle launched on this global platform, and Nissan is going with, at least for now, the iPhone method. That's small iterative changes over time that hopefully result in a great car later down the road. The Aria was, yes, the first try at a global EV platform. Can we count the old Leaf? Liquid cooling. Sorry, excuse me. Regardless of why, I don't think the original Leaf was ready for worldwide mass production and adoption. It was a compliance car from the compliance era. And being first is enough in a lot of cases, and it was for the Leaf. And Nissan still has a battery problem. AESC, I believe, is the company that makes their batteries, and the supply is a problem. Probably part of the reason the Aria was canceled, but the Leaf has also been scaled back. It's not good news when the new car on your new global platform gets scaled back before its launch. That's a battery problem. And the fact that they're broke. I'm not criticizing Nissan. It's very public knowledge that Nissan is broke. Nissan also has a manufacturing problem. They should have seen the writing on the wall when the carrot in the form of the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, and they didn't. Now all that's left is the stick.
No more global warming, no more global cooling, all of these stupid people.
Between the battery problem and the Japan manufacturing only problem, Nissan now has a scale problem too. They won't be able to scale up the Nissan Leaf. It'll just be sold in whatever numbers they can build. And it sounds like AESC is going to make that determination. Either way, as a result, profit margins for Nissan will likely be low on the Leaf. If the company doesn't disappear entirely, the whole thing at this point on the balance sheet is just a big red bag of wishes. Technology is not something we even need to discuss on the Aria. It wasn't there. Navigation wasn't there, no one-pedal driving, and yet with all those problems, Nissan was still able to iterate, develop, and lower the price of a much better version of their only EV. The next steps for Nissan are just this portion of the video played in reverse, starting here. Fix the battery problem that fixes the manufacturing problem that fixes the scale problem. It's like a country song. If Nissan can open a plant in the US that builds Leafs or move Leaf production to a US facility, at least in the short term, the Leaf can be a major competitor. It does have really good brand recognition after all. And if we rewind to the heydays of the Leaf, GM had a similar strategy to Nissan. But we have to talk about Ford before we talk about GM. The order's important. November 17th, 2019, historically that's right before the Cybertruck, Ford launched the Mach-E. And Ford, I will cautiously say, has positioned itself as a potential and aspirational leader in the EV industry. What is an aspirational leader? I don't know, but we'll get to that. The branding on the Mustang was dead on. Excellent job. In my opinion, the Mustang name is as recognizable as the Ford name. I may be wrong about the rest of the world. Let me know down in the comments. Ford's Skunk Works came out of the gate really strong. Technology is excellent and is as competitive as anything else, especially from an end user standpoint. They got CarPlay with Apple Maps that finds your chargers. What? And it still looks good, feels good, and runs good, even though both of Ford's models are 5 years old or more. Manufacturing, not so much. I think manufacturing has improved for Ford since they launched their EVs, but it's still a problem. Ford only makes 2 models, so when the Mach-E outsells the regular Mustang, I mean, that's cool and all, but it's all of the electric SUV sales from Ford versus a 2-door specialty car. The Lightning is the same, no scale, no profits. And there's no scale here. And I can prove this by asking you one question. Will the Chevy Equinox EV outsell the Mustang and the Lightning for 2025? It's going to be close. And then there's batteries. Right now, Ford is definitely working on batteries, and I think if Ford keeps all of its promises, that their battery strategy will end up being very solid. They got CATL as a partner, LG's moving production to the US. It's kind of all good news on the future of Ford. But that's what I mean by Ford aspiring to be the leader in EVs. Ford will be competitive on price and chemistry when it comes to batteries soon. Too bad it comes after they could have made a whole bunch more money and saved customers a whole bunch more money using the Inflation Reduction Act. I think they are still getting money, but the trigger was pulled a little too late, in my opinion. The dark horse, pun intended, is that Ford saved long-distance travel for non-Tesla EVs single-handedly a couple years back. Jim Farley took a trip with his kids, and he just reached out to Tesla and said, hey man, why can't we use your chargers? A couple years later, basically everyone has access to the supercharger network. Sorry, BMW. But that move didn't benefit Ford financially. Again, let's hope goodwill exists, because Jim Farley is my favorite CEO because of that move. The elephant, remember, we already had a dark horse, is the Louisville plant and its retool. But this is the problem with Ford. They're aspiring to be the next EV manufacturer. Will they? I don't know. Plants get shut down all the time. How about that Lordstown plant? What's it been doing? Is it Lordstown's? Is it Foxconn's? Are they building Fiskars there? Are they going to build Chinese cars there? Are they going to build phones there? If I have to tell you about a future plan to prove to you that a brand is significant in 2026, there's probably more aspiration than action. Didn't Ford make an Aspire too? To sum up Ford, good batteries, good future plans, poor lineup. Ford won't be participating in the new EV driver adoption of 2026. The first round of this era for Ford is out. Now on to GM. First, GM builds a compliance car. And, like Nissan, decides, hey, why don't we just win the compliance era? And that's without talking about the Volt, and I'm not going to. That's the only mention it's going to get. In hindsight, I do think GM will go down as winning the compliance era with the Bolt, even with the recall. Remember, they ran out of tax credits, and that means I have to mention the Volt twice. But Bolt versus Leaf, as far as value right now, can anyone say liquid cooled?
Liquid cooling.
And when the compliance era was coming to an end, which is completely the result of the launch of the Model 3, GM needed consumers to change their opinion of GM electric vehicles and look at them as a serious competitor. And not just the manufacturer of the Bolt, which was a serious competitor. Again, they ran out of tax credits, but the Model 3 was a whole different level of serious. So in February of 2020, GM came out swinging, or should I say with a blitz, when they aired the commercial for the Hummer EV during the Super Bowl, along with a number of other commercials, including Dr. Evil and a logo change, all around the same time. And I'm pretty sure that Hummer commercial sold a lot of Model 3s, because when you Google electric car, Tesla lets you order one online. And we were all at home in 2020 watching the Super Bowl with a device open, unknowingly waiting for the pandemic to be declared. But that ad, along with those other campaigns I mentioned, helped GM be considered a serious player in EVs. They were going to release a truck, and they kind of stole Ford's branding strategy, which is kind of GM's thing, but they gave it a twist, also very historically familiar, and they tried to make you go back in time and do a little revisionist history with the most unobtainium model they could think of. I'm not going to sugarcoat this and tell you I was convinced that GM was going to succeed in this moment. The Model 3 was hotcakes, the Model Y was coming. We all thought Tesla was going to take over the world. I mean, Elon told us 100 times. The Cybertruck was like all the views of every EV video online because it was going to be $40,000. I still have my reservation, by the way. I leave it in my Tesla app to remind me never to trust anything that man says. But GM found a way to make it work, and then repeated the same thing they've been doing better than anyone else in human history. Yes, I'm talking to you, 1980s Lee Iacocca, badge engineering. By the time the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit was figured out, GM had multiple models on the list. They had sold their first Hummer EV. They'd announced the Blazer EV. They'd launched the Lyriq. Some people even got 2023 Bolts with a tax credit. I'm very jealous, by the way. So with a market position like this, what do? Well, you go profitable, baby. Kill the compliance car and then find a way to replace all those sales weight they already had. They'd already agreed to build the Honda Prologue. Chevy has never really tried to sell the Blazer EV, but I'm pretty certain that they never would have even made it had it not been for the contract they made with Honda to build that Prologue. Even the launch pictures of the Blazer were the SS model. And who cares about the Blazer when you've got the Equinox? All three of those cars launched at the same time, basically. And the Lyriq could just continue to do numbers along with the ZDX that's built right beside it, with a tax credit for all. Of course, until the end of the tax credit when GM or Acura cancel the ZDX. This is kind of proof that GM is still trying to win with EVs. More on that in a minute. By 2024, GM had 2 US battery plants, the longest range pickup in 3 completely different trims and use cases from 3 different brands, the only convertible, the cheapest available EV, and a CEO that wasn't single-handedly alienating their entire demographic one tweet at a time. That doesn't mean she wasn't trying to dismantle CARB behind our backs, but what else is new? And sometime in the next very soon, the Bolt will be back with real-world grit and will beat the living chemistry out of the Leaf, literally. Because stats only matter until the metal hits the lot. If the new Bolt has 240 miles of range or more, it wins. And it could likely be better than the Leaf in every way. Why 240? Well, what's 300 times 0.8? Because that's what you'll charge your Leaf to. Remember the battery problem? LFP charges to 100%, which means at 240 miles of range and 100% charge on LFP, you're going to beat the Leaf as far as your daily drive, or at least match it in actual real-world capability. Going on a road trip? No need to change your plans or schedule a charge. You're at 100%. Going to the grocery store? You're at 100%. This is why you've seen so many ads for the Leaf and nothing about the Bolt. We haven't even seen the entire car. Chevy is not worried. The Leaf will sell Bolts. That LFP chemistry is why everything else about the Bolt can be the same as the old one. Just change the cheap stuff. New lights, new bumpers, new charge port. That's nothing. It's kind of like the difference between Bolt Gen 1 and Bolt Gen 2. With LFP and 240 miles of range, the Bolt beats everything about the Leaf except that autochromatic, unopenable roof. And I bet every trim of that Bolt will have Google navigation. You know why? It's not a good reason. It's because they sell all your data to LexisNexis anyway. Mess around in a GM, your insurance rates are going to go up. They're making money off your data, essentially. And with that said, I think GM has everything in line when it comes to EVs: technology, manufacturing, scale, and batteries. You know how I know? Their EVs are profitable. There's only one other US company that can say that. Speaking of them, let's talk about the most boring refrigerator of a fleet of cars that beats everything else. The cheap Model Y better be cheap because everything is gone. Some people will like it. It doesn't have the cyber scam bar in the middle. The cheap Model Y won't look like Elon's biggest mistake from the front, but it'll have like 4 speakers only in the dashboard, no glass roof, which also might be a win, but no TPMS maybe. I think they've got a technological solution for the TPMS, but the truth is there's nothing interesting to tell here. Musk wants to take over the world. He no longer cares about innovating or what his cars look like, what batteries they have because he has a contract with every manufacturer, what innovations they get as long as they get grok so they can run on natural gas. And honestly, they don't care if you buy one. The most important thing with Elon's cars is that you take the fall when the self-driving kills you. He bought the whole government, remember? That way he won't be slowed down in his objective to put a robot in every home and a robo-taxi in every driveway?
You know, take care of them like a shepherd tends their flock. You have your flock of cars, and you're the shepherd, and you take care of your flock of cars.
He's not going to clean them or charge them. You will. They've even changed their mission statement. It now reads,
To the moon. To the moon.
Because no one is going to Mars. That part's sarcasm, but the change is real, and they're no longer after sustainable energy. If they were, the 4 million cars they have on the road would plug into the grid.
It's an intuitive conclusion to see that batteries could support that peak.
Batteries could support that peak. Batteries could support that peak.
Long story short, everybody who worships Elon will have an opportunity to buy a Tesla, as well as all of the shareholders and all of the referral code collectors and all of the people who don't care about cars at all. It is the perfect car if you don't care about cars. Tesla has had all 4 fundamentals figured out since 2020. They make a nice car in the same way the Kremlin is a nice place. You can't deny that it's there. You can't deny that it's significant or that it's great.
Terrible. Yes, but great.
We might as well talk about the other startups. In 2026, Tello still won't exist. Aptera will deliver 2 units, 1 to each CEO. And I'll just add a correction in here. In a previous video, I had indicated that Aptera could be accepting binding contracts so reservation holders could get a tax credit, but it's not a car, it's a bike, so no tax credits. And Slate trucks, however many they build, if they build any, will be extremely expensive on cars and bids until at least 2027. And if you don't know any of the people that work there personally, you're not going to get one. The talent, the tubers, and the friends and family are getting Slates and nobody else. Lucid might start delivering the Gravity in 2026 instead of arguing about how many they've already delivered. And Lucid will continue to have excellent engineering and excellent range and Saudi Arabian ownership. Air, Gravity, Earth, is that the new one? I can't wait for the Lucid Ocean. They've already applied for the trademark. That would make a lot of Fisker owners very confused, and that's a hilarious Google search in the event that happens. I'm thinking they're going for Captain Planet.
Anybody else want to go green? Yeah, that's what I thought.
And if that's true, give me the Lucid Heart. If Lucid gets 10 out of 10 for technology and 10 out of 10 for batteries, the other two are still a huge problem. Lucid is short on money, and even with the delivery of these new robo-taxis, the financial future is uncertain. The real question here for 2026 lies with Rivian and the R2. How many will they sell? How much will they cost? I say 5,000, 76,990. And they'll all be made in Illinois, not the new Georgia plant. At least in 2026. If you qualified for the last tax credit, you're not getting one of these, unless you already own a Rivian. I think that might be the first determining factor on who gets one. But regardless, everyone will be trying to jump the line. The tubers will be knives out to get them. The recalls, the faults, the referral points. The Rivian news isn't pretty as of late. Rivian offers owners cash to sign away their legal rights. I know people always hassle me about the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act and how it doesn't even matter when it comes to aftermarket installs. But for $2,000, you hereby release Rivian and its affiliated entities from all causes of action you may have for breach of warranty, breach of state lemon law, and breach of the federal Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act relating to your Rivian vehicle to date. As far as right to repair, consumer ownership, and kind of any protections when it comes to vehicles in general, especially with such a connected car, this is a travesty in my opinion. Here's another one. Rivian vehicles have a known issue with their 12-volt batteries, some design flaw with the mounting bracket on all Gen 2s. That's not pretty. And this is a 4-year-old second-generation vehicle at this point. And here's the real kicker. Rivian has been getting tons of money. Ford, Amazon, and now Volkswagen. But Volkswagen-Rivian software joint venture allegedly hits turbulence as a result. Electric models intended to run on Rivian software are apparently delayed. And if anyone's curious as to why I think the R2 will initially launch at $80,000, it's that. Rivian has been on the verge of disappearance since appearance. I think an R2 comes in $10 cheaper than the cheapest R1 for 2026. If all goes well, 2027 could be huge for Rivian. I don't think Rivian is a good stock buy, but I think Rivian is a good bet overall. Volkswagen will be forfeiting the adoption era. Oh, did I just call it what I think it really is? Either way, I treat Volkswagen like it's an oil company. The ownership strategy is a magic eye puzzle, and so is any electric future or plan. We might get a really good-looking TT, and there might be a Porsche version of it. And if you have enough money to buy an electric Cayenne, you will be the coolest person in the neighborhood, because if you only drive around town, you'll never have to plug it in. The Honda Zero series will be 2027. They will ride this Prologue for all it's worth. It's turned out to be very popular. I have no idea how much money Honda is losing on it, but the cheap leases are continuing after September 30th. and those leases cannot be a binding contract. You have to take delivery of a lease. So my opinion is, if you like the Prologue and you can still get one cheaply, get it in 2026, as long as the deals are there. Speaking of deals, the Toyota CHR might be a good deal, and it might not, at least for 2026. This is historical performance I'm basing this on. A $35,000 CHR might be possible, and pretty cool in that case. It'll be all-wheel drive, fast, easy to park, and hard to see out of. I'd take it if I didn't basically already have one. The BZ is better and worse for 2026. The better is 314 miles of range and a front-wheel drive XLE Plus, but the XLE trim has a smaller battery and even less range than last year. But it's also right around 35 grand. And if you want all-wheel drive or more options, it just goes up from there. The conclusion on the 26 BZ is the front-wheel drive electric RAV4 now starts at $35,000. A bunch of improvements over the old one, but it's still going to be $45,000 starting for the all-wheel drive, which kind of puts it out of contention for the adoption era. I guess I'll continue saying it now that I've spilled the beans. I don't need to say anything about Subarus because they're all the same with different and ultimately better names, but I am leaving out the BZ Woodland and the Trail Seeker. They look great. Welcome back, EV Estate Wagon. Unfortunately, they're going to be $50,000, but they might be the coolest thing around $50,000 that you can get in 2026, if they're released in 2026. A lot of ifs with Toyota, but we don't need to talk about any of the fundamentals. They've got those. But if adoption is the key, we need to adopt. And to adopt, we need to lower the price. That's just how that works. 10% of car sales in America are electric. The 10th percentile of American household income is $178,000. We need to get to these folks. 80 grand. That's the median household income, or the midpoint. Not the average. The average is way higher. See? Too many billionaires. But the reason we need to get to that 80,000 is because about 60% of U.S. drivers have access to a driveway. And right now, that's kind of the only way to justify getting an EV and being able to call it better in every way. The political issue is going to be less. There's no whining to be done about people getting credits anymore. So we need to be able to convince everyone in America with a driveway to get an EV because, well, the people that don't have driveways can't quite get one yet. There's no savings. That's a whole different video, and it's literally a whole different video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. But just to make sure that's why this video is being made, the adoption era needs adoption. Adoption needs cheap cars. Cheap cars aren't $50,000. That said, let's talk about Hyundai, Genesis, Kia. The EV3 will release at the end or the middle of 2026, depending on different factors, and it might be able to compete for volume. Hyundai Kia is pretty solid on all the four fundamentals. They got batteries, they got manufacturing, they got scale, they got technology. But that scale is being really strategically placed by Hyundai. Let me show you. This is the Hyundai Kona EV search result for me for the last 3 years. There just aren't any. I know you probably see them. You've probably seen a ton of them, but they don't sell them around here. You know what they do sell? $45,000 Nero EVs, or at least they're for sale. That cannot be justified. $52,000 for an all-wheel drive EV6 base model? Yeah, I'll take that. What's that, $120 a month extra if I go for 84 months? These are all questions that the adoption era will need to answer. And right now, Hyundai, Genesis, Kia is not in a position to compete at the very lowest end, and they're not going to try in 2026. And the reason you aren't going to find cheap Hyundai Kia EVs in 2026 is because Hyundai sells cheap gas cars. That's how they started. That's how they still do it.
That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
They could win this whole thing. I definitely believe in their products, as far as electric anyway, but I don't think they're ready with a cheap option unless they copy Honda and just decide to lose money on their EVs for 2026. They could keep the leases crazy low. Who knows? But as far as MSRP in the States, Hyundai's not out to compete in 2026. Another thing I'd like to reiterate is this is about new cars. The used market is completely different, and it's going to be crazy, and I don't even want to guess. So much is about to change. My wife told me I was crazy to lease a car. Then I wrote all the numbers on paper and all the options for what happens at the end of the lease, and she then told me the lease was a good idea. All that's going away. Unless the EV3 is $30,000 starting and you can find them, Hyundai, Genesis, and Kia are going to rely on trade-ins and legacy sales. They're not going to be looking to convert. The new BMW might be completely the opposite, but unfortunately, even though that product looks extremely good in basically every way, except supercharging, where's the supercharging? It's going to be $60,000. I think it'll be worth every penny and probably excellent. I'd definitely rather have it than an EV6 GT line. But BMW's out for low price competition. We knew that. As far as batteries, CATL. BMW's ready. And yes, BMW has another brand, but this isn't competitive either. Mercedes is kind of the same boat. New platform, new cars, just a little too far out of reach for the affordable market. I think BMW is probably winning as far as batteries, but They're not really in this discussion. And of course, just to make sure they aren't, they just canceled the EQB. As far as Stellantis, they shipped all the Fiat 500Es to Colorado so they could give them away, literally, and that's all there is to say about that. Other than I had one viewer who got a Wagoneer S, and it's at the dealer, and it's just been there since the first week of ownership. And that's it. Oh, the Charger Daytona? It answers the question, what would Fisker ownership have been like in 2024 with absolutely no community? I cannot recommend any Stellantis products, nor will I talk about them anymore in this video.
Not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good.
And before I go any further, I didn't forget about Volvo. They make one really expensive EV, one moderately expensive EV, and one small EV that's too much money for what you get. Their little brother Polestar is a going concern.
And that's all I have to say about that.
So to sum it all up, I know I'm going to leave some stuff out, and some of the prices are speculative. But here's a best case scenario for 2026 new vehicles that run on batteries only in the United States. It might not be 2026, but Nissan will eventually release a nerfed Leaf for under $30,000, and there will be a Slate truck under 30 as well. We'll call it the blank Slate. We just don't know if it'll be 26. In the 30s, it's a little more certain. The Nissan Leaf obviously will start at $30,000. The new Bolt will definitely be priced in the 30s, as will the Equinox EV. Will the cheap Model Y make it to the 30s? We'll see. Same with the EV3, that could easily be a $41,000 car. The Kona EV starts in the mid-30s, as does the Toyota CHR and Subaru Uncharted. The Toyota BZ and Subaru Solterra also start in the mid to upper 30s. The 40s is our most crowded category, with the Mustang Mach-E starting just over 40. The Blazer EV is going to come in somewhere in there as well, along with the Prologue. The Volkswagen ID4 is a $40,000 MSRP, as is the Kia Niro EV. Yes, the Niro is a $41,000 MSRP. The Tesla Model 3 and Model Y both start in the 40s. No, the Model 3 does not have any plans to be below that. Once that tax credit goes away, the cheapest Model 3 is $42,000. The Kia EV6 starts in the 40s, as well as its twin, the Ioniq 5. The Mini Countryman EV MSRP is in the 40s, as well as the Lexus RZ, if you can believe that, starts in the 40s. The Volvo EX30 starts in the upper 40s. The Tello truck would start in the 40s if it's released. Finally, the Rivian R2 has been advertised to start in the 40s, and I've got oceanfront property in Arizona. And if you'll buy that, I'll throw the Golden Gate in free. Remember, initial Model S Plaid sales were in the $140,000 range. Those people lost a Model Y in depreciation over the first 8 months they owned it. Expect the same for the R2, or come back and roast me if that's not what happens. The 50s are a little bit less crowded. The Q4 e-tron starts in the 50s, as well as the Genesis GV60. If Acura releases an EV this year, the RSX EV will be somewhere in the 50s, along with the Toyota BZ Woodland and the Subaru Trailseeker. New Mercedes CLA has a slated MSRP in the 50s. The MSRP for an F-150 Lightning also lands in the 50s. Got your 3 rows as well, the Kia EV9 and the Ioniq 9, starting in the 50s. We all know it just goes up from there. The Cadillac Optic barely squeezes into the 50s, but it does. On to the 60s. The Q6 e-tron has an MSRP in the 60s. The A6 Sportback e-tron, also in the 60s. The new BMW iX3 has a base price in the 60s. The Silverado and Sierra EVs both start in the 60s. Yes, you can get them for that cheap. The Polestar 2 is a $61,000 MSRP, if you can believe it, which makes the $69,000 Polestar 3 seem like a much better deal. Both Polestars start in the 60s. The ID Buzz also starts in the 60s if you can find one of those. The Porsche Macan EV starts in the 60s. The new Volvo EX60 will likely also start in the 60s, but we're not quite sure. And the Cadillac Lyriq starts in the $60,000 range. On to the 70s, that's your SQ6 e-tron, your S6 Sportback e-tron. The Lucid Air starts in the 70s. The Rivian R1T starts in the 70s, as does the Rivian R1S, as well as the Cadillac Vistic. You've also got the Cybertruck starting in the 70s. In the 80s, we've got the long-shot dream of a prayer that is the Afeela 1. In the event that the Sony-Honda collaboration launches in 2026, it will start in the $80,000 range. The Volvo EX90 starts in the 80s. We've got the e-tron GT, Porsche Taycan, the Porsche Cayenne EV, the upcoming Genesis GV90, would be an $80,000 plus vehicle. The Lucid Gravity is going to be over $80,000, and both the Model S and X start over $80,000. And of course, the Hummer EV is going to be over $80,000 MSRP. I know I've missed vehicles, so please feel free to help me fill them in the comments. What are you going to get? Let me know your thoughts and how wrong I am, not only now, but in the future. Come back to this video and tell me how much I got wrong down in the comments below. Join Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access to videos, and subscribe for more. We'll see you on the next one.
Hey, smash the like button.
Thank you.